number of jobs businesses want to create relatively low in terms of how fast they're growing. And people in the labor market are seeing that. And so some of them are saying, I'm just going to pause. I'm not even going to look for now. Maybe they are a spouse who has somebody else who is in the labor market, or maybe they're going to go into an area that we don't measure in some of these surveys. But whichever way you think about it, they're going to withdraw from our data. They're going to be called not in the labor market.
Right.
And that's where that labor force participation number going down comes from, and why the unemployment rate went down strangely.
Yeah, let's take a closer look at that word uncertainty that you used earlier, because why are so many companies right now holding on to workers even as hiring is slowing, and workers are finding it tough to land a new job, which you just pointed out, the unemployment rate does show right now.
Mm-hmm. I think that we make a distinction sometimes between risk, which is something that businesses can quantify. What's the chance of something going to happen? And you can build that into your forecast. Uncertainty is something you can't quantify. You have to almost guess about it. And the economists who study this kind of thing, they show that that level of uncertainty is unusually high. And so businesses are having a very difficult time figuring out what the future holds. And so their reaction to it basically is to just hold on to where they're at. And workers are doing that too. Right. It's like, maybe I better not jump ship and try to find a different job. And so it's resulting in this situation where you've got kind of not a frozen labor market, but it's at least kind of slowed down.
Kind of locked in place. And I think that I've heard some people talk about consumer confidence. In fact, it is so low right now. A lot of people feel they're working without a net, and they don't want to make that move and try to jump and get a new job right now.
And they are already pinched in the job they have in terms of inflation, pinching their budgets. They're worried about that. And so in that kind of situation, maybe the best thing is to just hold on tight, see where things are going to go, and just kind of hold on to our seats.
Yeah, I got to ask you about artificial intelligence. We've talked about that so much this year, and that is changing the way companies hire, especially entry-level jobs, and manage workers as well. So I presume we're seeing that as well.
Definitely. Part of that, again, is you might attribute it to uncertainty, but when you have new technologies come along, such as artificial intelligence, it takes a while for companies to figure out how to use it. And I think we're in one of those situations where a lot of businesses are trying to figure out, well, is this going to make our current workers more productive? Is this something we can use to substitute for some of the workers we have and let them go? They're still trying to figure that out. And so that's having another effect on the labor market that induces that low hiring, frozen kind of market where the businesses don't really know what to do. So some of them are hiring more workers who can use the artificial intelligence. Other companies are getting rid of workers thinking they can substitute. And so it's kind of competing with one another in the labor market.
Yeah. Lewis, I'll give you 30 more seconds. Give me what you think perhaps is the single biggest labor market trend moving forward for business leaders.
I think one of the biggest ones right now is the retirement of baby boomers and whether they should be replaced or whether we're going to be able to use these artificial intelligence tools to substitute for some of that. Right now, businesses are very uncertain about where that's going to end up, because if they need to hire workers, they should do it now so that they can learn the skills from the people who are already there. If they're not, then they can go ahead and let these people retire and start bringing in the AI bots.
Wow, that could be very interesting. Lewis, thank you so much for your insight. Lewis Johnson, we appreciate it.
You're welcome.
To Venezuela now, and it has been 8 days since 2 massive earthquakes hit that country. On Thursday, another remarkable rescue. A man pulled alive from the ruins of a collapsed building in the port city of La Guaira. Rescue workers worked more than 100 hours to free the security guard after making contact with him days earlier. Sonar technology helped guide the painstaking operation to reach him inside what was once a 7-story building. Once again, a rare glimmer of hope that more survivors could possibly be found. The official death toll right now is approaching 2,300. Stephen Gibbs has more from Caracas.
No less than 7 nations involved in that rescue, because it was a 5-day affair and people had to work in rotation and several tunnels were built to get to him. That man, Hernan Gil, he really is a form of hope in many ways for this nation, because everyone here, or thousands of people, have been watching that attempt to get him out, and also have been lifted by his extraordinary sense of decorum as he was being saved. For 5 days, as I said, people were in contact with him, and he repeatedly said, look, don't go to too much trouble, don't put yourself at risk, I'm fine. He even said, please don't tell my wife I'm alive in case I don't make it out alive. But he did make it out alive. He is, of course, one of the very lucky ones here. There are far more people who unfortunately haven't made it. And now, as we go well into the 8th day of this post-earthquake situation, the rescuers really do think it's very unlikely there'll be more miracles, as they put it here, like his. Well, I'm definitely like one of the lucky ones. I live in a building that was badly shaken but survived the earthquake. You know, in terms of the mood of the capital here, Caracas, it's very gloomy, of course. There's actually a 7-day period of mourning going on, but that isn't really necessary. Many businesses are shut because they don't want to do business. They want to focus on other things. Lots of people are sort of off for grieving purposes. You know, when you have more than 15,000 people homeless, that means that everyone kind of knows everyone who's at least lost their home, and many people unfortunately know people who have died, or families of people who have died. Now, one of the consequences of that in this city is everyone wants to help. They want to do something that makes them feel useful. So there have been these extraordinary displays of people trying to gather anything they can that they think might help the people down there by the coast that have been so badly affected. And in fact, there is a bit of a downside to that. And the authorities have said, look, this needs to be much more organized. If you have a whole lot of people going down just to give toys or whatever to those that are suffering, it comes out of a good place of people's heart, but it actually can complicate things. So a very, very difficult situation. Changed lives all over this city, and a very changed city and country, of course, for the weeks and months ahead.
Well, Venezuela's coast, as we just heard, was hit hardest. And in La Guaira, families are still searching the rubble for missing loved ones and for pieces of their shattered lives. Ana Cabral is there and has this story.
This was Domenico's home. The family lived upstairs above their shop, and when the quake struck, the upper floor came down onto the ground floor. He survived with his wife and son, holding on to each other under a doorframe.
I hugged my son and my wife like this, and we stayed under the doorframe. We got hurt a little. Hurt here, a block fell on me, on the leg like this. But thank God, we healed and nothing else happened.
He says earthquake safety lessons taught in schools are what saved them.
You have to listen to what they teach us in school about earthquakes. Many say, no, that doesn't work. Look, it saved my life. It saved our life.
Not everyone was as lucky. The official death toll continues to rise and thousands remain missing. At this collapsed shop in Catialamar, Yusmar has kept vigil around this corner where her teenage son used to work, but already accepting, or at least trying to, that he likely lost his life. Friends and even compassionate strangers have been trying to help her find and recover his remains, as rescuers prioritize spots with more chance of finding survivors.
My son works there. I've been here since the 24th, since 8 at night. I came because they told me my son hadn't come out. I ran down desperate to look for him. I called, but he never answered me. And then there was all this rubble here.
Some parts of La Guaira are completely destroyed. That's what we see here in Playa Grande, for example. Rescue and emergency relief teams are working, even if it's slower than many people here would like. But beyond the emergency lies a harder, longer challenge: rebuilding not just the infrastructure, but also people's lives. That effort starting from the bottom up. At collapsing centers like this one, the nation's rich people who lost everything. Osvaldo Bolivar came looking for clothing, not for himself, but for workmates.
I'm looking for clothes for my friends who lost their apartments, their houses, lost practically everything. And I'm trying to find some clothes to help support them with something.
Beside the rebel, volunteer doctors, nurses, and medical students run a field clinic that began with a single table on the street and then expanded on donations. Some of the professionals had their own homes hit or lost colleagues in the disaster.
We have to stay strong in front of others to give them courage. But this hits us in the soul. It hits us in the heart. In fact, in these buildings, we lost colleagues of ours from work. I have a colleague who lost her granddaughter, and that hurts. It hurts to see so many dead children, so many people. And well, we have to arm ourselves with strength, with courage, to be able to help. We can't weaken.
For now, La Guaira is focused on two tasks: recovering its debt and looking after its living. The rebuilding will take years. Paulo Cabral, CGTN, La Guaira, Venezuela.
Okay, still to come on our program, China and Europe. It's a trade talks, plus a look at China's growing manufacturing industry. That's coming up next on Global Business.
A look at new opportunities among the business trends. This is Global Business.
Welcome back, everyone. China's manufacturing sector expanded for a 7th straight month in June. This, according to data out earlier in the week, and a big part of that growth has to do with artificial intelligence. But China is also pushing to embed green development into its infrastructure. Zhang Xishuan explains.
This is an industry where products weigh hundreds of tons and sell for millions of yuan. This power is for a large wind turbine. The large wind turbines that sit atop towers like this are often lauded as one of the best ways to generate green energy. But many ask the question, what is the cost of manufacturing these things in terms of carbon emissions?
In 2024, our group's total electricity consumption for the year was nearly 50,000 megawatt hours, of which 94% came from traditional thermal power and only 6% from green electricity, indicating a heavy reliance on fossil fuels. That year, the combined carbon emissions from direct combustion and purchased electricity reached 43,800 tons, with carbon emissions per 10,000 yuan of revenue accounting for 0.09 tons.
Last year alone, the wind turbine power manufacturing giant produced 713,000 tons of power with more than 10 factories across China. Manufacturing these towers using traditional technologies usually demands a lot of energy and also represents a large carbon footprint.
Recent years, foreign clients, especially those from the EU, have raised new requirements regarding ESG, carbon footprint, and carbon emissions. In 2026, they will also impose mandatory carbon tariffs under the CBAM. Against this backdrop, our company has been actively pursuing a green energy transition. Some clients even require that we use 100% green electricity in the manufacturing of their products.
The day I visited one of the firm's factories in Yangzhou, Jiangsu, it was working at almost full capacity to ensure a July delivery for 2 overseas projects, one in Australia, the other Serbia. So, the big-name manufacturers were among the first to recognize the issue. And so things have changed. The group started its green transition 3 years ago, having released its first ESG report back in 2023. Last year, it joined the United Nations Global Compact. Part of the response is right here, an entire rooftop covered in solar panels. Last year, the factory in the Jiangsu city of Yangzhou had 30% of the electricity it used generated by those solar panels. But for a wind turbine supplier, the obvious question is, why not use wind power?
As for building a wind farm, it requires a site with good wind resources and also occupies a large land area. Given our factory's actual conditions, we do not have much spare land, but we do have ample rooftop space. We chose the green electricity solution that is more suitable for a manufacturing plant like ours.
And of course, adding solar power is far from enough. It's always important to continue finding even more efficient technologies to lower that carbon footprint.
In terms of groove processing and grinding, we introduced mechanized equipment, which improved overall efficiency by 35%. In welding, we upgraded the weld groove design from a V-shape to a U-shape, increasing welding deposition efficiency by 40%. Additionally, we adopted more advanced regenerative thermal oxidizer equipment for environmental protection, further enhancing energy utilization efficiency.
After this series of upgrades, The group has lowered energy and material consumption by around 5%. R&D-driven carbon efficiency is expected to improve by around 8% year-on-year. 赵世璇, SMG International for CGTN Shanghai.
China and the EU will hold the second meeting of their Trade and Investment Forum this fall. China's Commerce Ministry says EU Trade Commissioner Maros Sefcovic will travel to China for the discussions. The two sides agreed to meet once or twice a year at the ministerial level. The inaugural session focused on balanced trade, with both sides pledging closer cooperation in AI, the green transition, and services. They also reaffirmed each other as stable, important trading partners. Okay, coming up next, Europe keeps sweltering under the sun, and now the United States is seeing its own triple-digit temperatures heading into the big July 4th holiday weekend. We'll have a lot more of that coming your way next.
A look at new opportunities among the business trends. This is Global Business.
Millions of people across the eastern United States are sweltering under a suffocating heat dome. The extreme heat is creating dangerous conditions and putting a damper on celebrations for a major holiday. Jim Spellman reports.
A brutal heat wave is stretching across the eastern half of the United States. Good news for some.
I love the heat. The heat has made this business Iceman's dream. It's 4th of July. We got a heat wave coming. What could an Iceman ask for?
But for most, it's a struggle to stay cool amid dangerous conditions.
You drink water, you eat ice cream, you know what I'm saying? Do what you gotta do.
The sky-high temperatures are driven by a so-called heat dome, a high-pressure system that traps sweltering air near the Earth's surface. Researchers say heat domes have grown more common due to climate change. Along with the heat comes high humidity, making it feel even hotter.
Many of these cities in the Northeast are going to be very, very close to 100 degrees for the actual air temperature, but the real field temperature, which expresses the way it feels, the human body feels when you're outside, is going to be between 105 and in some spots up to about 112, 113 degrees in areas like Washington, D.C.
That's about 45 degrees Celsius. Here in Washington, D.C., the potentially record-setting heat is expected to remain in place through Saturday's July 4th Independence Day holiday, when thousands are expected for fireworks and a speech by President Trump on the National Mall.
On July 4th, it's going to be approximately 107 degrees out. And I'm going to go and I'm going to make a really long speech just to show that I can do anything.
The East Coast heat wave should subside next week. In the western United States, extreme heat, drought winds, and drought conditions are driving dozens of wildfires across multiple states. 3 firefighters died battling a blaze in Colorado last weekend, and dangerous code red fire conditions remain in place through at least the next few days. Jim Spellman, CGTN, Washington.
That does it for this edition of Global Business, but you can always check out other editions out of Beijing, Washington, Nairobi, and London, Times, and TNT. I'm Sean Cavils in Washington. Thanks, everyone.
You've been listening to programs from CGTN Radio. We invite you to visit us online for more audio, pictures, and in-depth reports at radio.cgtn.com. You can access a wide range of programs and find your favorite news, talk, features, entertainment shows, and podcasts. Hear the difference with CGTN Radio.
China's green house. A quarter of China is now covered in forest. That's over 20 billion cubic meters of thriving green. From just 12% in the 1980s to over 25% today. It's the result of decades of planting, protecting, and persistence. Forests are more than trees. They're natural air purifiers, water towers, and living banks of biodiversity and carbon storage. When mountains mountains turn green, our future turns golden. Hey there, global listeners. Get ready for the hottest discussions on the airwaves. Roundtable, your passport to the heart of China's buzzing society. Pressing issues, lifestyle trends, and impactful policies, we're tackling them head on with wit, wisdom, and a whole lot of fun. Discover the real China through the eyes and voices of its people. Gain a unique global perspective on topics that resonate universally. Tune in and experience the excitement dial on Roundtable as we bridge gaps and break barriers one discussion at a time. Don't just listen, be transformed.
Want to learn about world affairs in a more laid-back and accessible manner? Join insiders, experts, and analysts in the casual setting of the chat lounge. Share their personal experiences and opinions on major events and hot issues. Subscribe to Chat Lounge for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Some say Chinese is one of the most difficult languages in the world, and learning it is almost impossible.
So learning Chinese, the most difficult thing.
So I'm sort of tone deaf. I can't really hear them.
I think the cultural mindset is the biggest complication for grammar.
It's just complicated. So much.
Only because you're not learning it in the right way. Why not try Takeaway Chinese, where you can take some Chinese away and experience progress day by day. Takeaway Chinese. I'll promise you a difference.
Ideas matter. Ideas matter.
This is Dialogue.
Hello and welcome to Dialogue. Addressing a gathering marking the 105th anniversary of the Communist Party of China, General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee, Xi Jinping, hailed the 105-year history of the party as the most magnificent epic of the Chinese nation. He urged the party to press ahead to build China into a modern socialist country on schedule. So how should we evaluate the party's achievements and governing logic over the past 105 years? What does this speech tell us about the party's discipline and capacity for self-renewal? And as China moves toward its long-term modernization goals, what challenges lie ahead? Well, joining me today are Xia Lu, Associate Professor from the School of CPC History and Party Building at the Renmin University of China. Carlos Martinez, author of The East is Still Red, Chinese Socialism in the 21st Century, and co-editor of Friends of Socialist China, and also Radhika Desai, Governor of International Manifesto Group. So, Radhika, I will start with you. I'm sure you have followed the speech. So I wonder, what's your major takeaways?
I think, first of all, the President Xi's speech really grasped the fundamentals of the achievements of the party. I would say that for this party to be more than a century old, 105 years old, while retaining the legitimacy among a billion-strong population, and having essentially transformed these people, the people of China, not only into an agent of their own history, giving the destiny of the people into the hands of the people of China, but into an agent of world history, essentially setting the world, the second major event, setting the world on a path to socialism after the Bolshevik Revolution was the Chinese Revolution, and the Bolshevik Revolution is no longer. The Chinese Revolution is still going. And so it set the humanity on a path to socialism, and it continues there, and it continues there at this particular time in history when the circumstances have become extremely dangerous thanks to the decline of that very capitalism. And in its decline, capitalism is unleashing chaos, destruction, economic destruction all over the world. And in this context, the CPC not only holds great legitimacy among the people of China, but it shows the way to the rest of the world, shows the way forward, and has become a beacon and an oasis of stability and, how can you say, stability and a visionary path to the future.
Carlos, President Xi Jinping said the party's endeavors over the past 1 to 5 years have fundamentally transformed the future of the Chinese people. I just said radical, blazed the right path toward the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, demonstrated the strong vitality of Marxism, and had a profound influence on the course of world history, and made the CPC a powerful communist party. What do you make of such a statement here?
It's a very powerful reiteration of the CPC's line, and it's a very consistent line over the course of more than a century. Marxism is obviously intimately connected with this project of the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, and Xi Jinping often says that only socialism can save China, and only socialism with Chinese characteristics can develop China. China tried kind of capitalist Western-style liberal democracy for a few decades from 1912, and that project was a failure in terms of dismantling feudalism, in terms of ending warlordism, in terms of uniting the country, in terms of modernizing, in terms of defeating imperialist intervention. And to achieve those things, China required and continues to require Marxism. It required and continues to require the leadership of the working class and the peasantry, and not sort of ceding the leadership of the country to a capitalist class that would focus on its own private interests. So Marxism and the Communist Party's leadership have enabled China to achieve something unprecedented in human history, and I think that's very strongly reasserted and reiterated in President Xi's speech.
Well, Xiaolu, of course, people often say if you want to understand China, you need to understand the party. That's surely how important the party's leadership in this country. And also President Xi mentioned about, in his speech, the 6 outstanding characteristics of the CPC, such as seeking truth, always adhering to the right direction, deeply rooted in the people, and rising to its historic mission, always maintaining the strategic initiative, etc. What do you make of that kind of summary of who the party is, what probably makes the party stand out?
Well, yes, this is a very good question. Well, actually, I was in the studio yesterday and listening to the President Xi's speech. I was also thinking about the internal logic of the 6 outstanding characteristics. Actually, I would like to use the Marxist principle to explain the logic. I think we can use the historical materialism and the dialectical materialism as the principle to understand the internal logic of the 6 outstanding features. For example, the Marxist principle, one of the Marxist principles is that we should use the systematical thinking rather than separated with each other. So all this kind of economic affair, political affair, social governance affair, and even those ecological management are connected with each other. So you couldn't just think of overcome one obstacle, leaving other obstacle unattached, right? That's the thing. The second is Marxist principle is about process thinking. So everything is changing, everything is dynamic. So the CPC is very good at using the dynamic way of thinking to see the question, to understand the question, and to solve the problem. And then, last but not least, the Marxist principle is the principle of confrontation of this kind of dialectical thinking. So each and everything has 2 sides. So there is one side positive, there is definitely the other side negative. So the CPC never kind of get rid of the negative thing. So the CPC admits that during the process of modernization, there must be some kind of modernity, and this modernity should be the question that waiting to be tackled. So in my opinion, the 6 outstanding features of the CPC just fits the principle of the Marxist dialectical materialism and historical materialism.
I'm not sure you agree with Xiaolu or not here, but then, what do you think are the factors probably contributing to the success of the CPC?
I think that the factors that contribute to the success of the CPC are its commitment to essentially the emancipation of the people of China, but also within a larger understanding of the world's road to socialism, of which China is a part. So I think Professor Xiaolu rightly mentioned that a key aspect of Marxism is dialectical thinking, process thinking, understanding historical thinking. History is a process But history is not just something that happens outside you. You are part of history. So what I think the party has done is it has transformed the Chinese people into an agent of history. And it has maintained this connection. It has maintained this position of the Chinese people in large part by committing itself to the material emancipation of the Chinese people and cultural development and so on. That is to say that by offering the Chinese people always a better future. Even today, when you think that, after all these achievements, what might China have to offer its people more? And it's still forging ahead, talking about developing new productive forces and a new civilization, ecological civilization, sustainability, all of these things. I think that the party is constantly able to see further into the future. So I think that's very important. And I just want to mention one other thing. I mean, I don't think Gramsci is very fashionable in China, but Italian Marxists from the 20s and 30s, he made a very interesting point. He said that in the past, in Machiavelli's time, the great political thinker of his country, he talked about princes, doing politics and history. Right. But he said in modern times, the modern prince is the party. The party is the political actor, because in mass politics, individuals can't do anything. You have to forge a mass political force, and that is what the party does. And the CPC has done this, excelled in it to an astonishing degree. I mean, how many people can say that have such a large party membership and retain after 100 years or 5 years of existence and after more 80 years of revolution, it remains a legitimate political force. It retains the consent and the support of the people of China. It is an astonishing piece, constantly moving with the times, adapting its strategy to what is needed, etc.
Exactly. I think that's key point here, Carlos. The party is 105 years old. It has run different stages of the national development. At the very beginning, about 50 plus members. 1921, the country was weak, was semi-colonized, and today, with more than 100 million members, and also the country is already the second largest economy. So here the question is, how does the party stay true to its original aspiration? It keep happening for the people, rejuvenation of the nation, despite all the challenges along the way.
Yeah, it's a very complicated and difficult question that I think the party itself grapples with constantly. I think there are a couple of very important elements. And the party's been quite consistent in those elements over time. We've been talking about Marxism and how Marxism relates to the party's trajectory. And of course, Marxism is something that changes over time. It's not a static dogma. It's not a religious belief. It's social science. And therefore, China, as the longest running and the largest socialist project and revolutionary process, has itself impacted Marxism, and so modern Marxism includes Xi Jinping thought, it includes Mao Zedong thought, and some of the key elements of that are the idea of seeking truth from facts, and the notion that the sole criterion of truth is the revolutionary practice of millions of people. And I think these ideas have continued through the party's history, through the first decades of socialist construction, through reform and opening up, and into the new era. So sticking to those core scientific ideas of seeking truth from facts has been crucial to the party's continuing development, continuing trajectory. And the other thing is being deeply rooted in the people, always maintaining this mission of serving the people, remaining true to what was called, back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, the mass line, the idea of going to the masses, taking their ideas, consolidating them, concentrating them, synthesizing them, and then going back to the masses to propagate and explain those ideas until the masses embrace them. I think, this concept of the mass line and retaining a very close connection with ordinary people, with the working class, with the peasantry, with intellectuals, with teachers, with doctors, with nurses, and so on, is an absolutely crucial element in sustaining the party so that it continues to represent the interests of the people and push China towards national rejuvenation.
That's an interesting point there, Xiaolu. I'm wondering, now you have 100 million members here. Many people probably wonder how does the party discipline and manage it, especially a larger party. Of course, it enables the party to stay in touch with the people because members come from different fields, a different part of the society. So in what way the members somehow stay united, stay in touch with the people, and also probably stay in line with the direction, with the policy of the party?
Well, actually, this is a very important theoretical and practical question mentioned by President Xi in his Xi Jinping thought on party building, reviewed just half a month ago. And I think there are two dimensions to understand this question. The first is how does this party stay in one unity? So that's the unique question unique difficulty for a large party like the CPC, because it's 100 million, more than 100 million, even larger than most of the countries in this world, right? There are only 16 countries with a population larger than 100 million, if I remember correctly. So how would you understand those countries stay in unity? Well, that's a very hard and very difficult thing. So for a large party, unique party with this good, will stay in unity in terms of thinking, in terms of the mindset, in terms of the action, and in terms of the project. How should we proceed the poverty alleviation? How should we proceed the Chinese modernization? And how should we proceed even the scientific innovation, the new quality productive forces, right? All these kind of things should be connected, should be coordinated in accordance with the same thing. So stay unity. That is why the Communist Party, as a Marxist and Leninist party, focuses more on this kind of thinking together and action together in accordance with the Central Committee. That is why the Central Committee's authority is emphasized, highlighted in a way. That's the first dimension. The second dimension is how could this party stay connected closely with the people? I think Carlos just now mentioned one of the characters, that's the mass line. So mass line is not only one slogan, it's not only kind of useful in the revolutionary history, it is still useful nowadays in a new era. So mass line means that to respect the people in the first way, to respect the people and to stay close with the people as the people think, care the people, and then protect the people and serve the people. And also to use this kind of a theory as the direction, as the way to put people in a better way, to improve the people's livelihood. So in my opinion, the Communist Party, not only the leading official, but also the rank and file official and the cadres, they always think how could they improve the people's livelihood? How could they make their job even better in order to gain the more and more constant support from the people? So that is why President Xi always talking about we should have the mindset of a danger. That danger, not always the danger outside China, but also the danger inside, the danger of disattach with the people or not stay close with the people. That is also a danger for China, for CPC.
Stay vigilant.
Right.
Also, of course, we take a look at China is in the path, in the middle way of full modernization. President Xi mentioned that Chinese path to modernization has created a new form of human civilization and expanded the choices available to developing countries as they pursue modernization. Share with us your understanding of this statement, remarks there.
Yeah, thank you. This question is also very important. First of all, I'd like to say something about the new form of human civilization and how should we understand and how should we define civilization. We have a lot of the university lectures and the courses on civilization. Most of them started with the history, with the history of arts and the philosophy and other kind of liberal arts courses. I agree with that. I totally agree with that. But I still think that the other important corner or important pillar to the civilization is the governance, is the governing style, is the governing kind of the way in which the society stay together, the way in which the society are coordinated. So I think that would be another pillar of the civilization. And that is why the Chinese path to modernization is going to provide a new form of human civilization. For it is not necessarily an alternative to the Western civilization. It is, I think, the composite, or let's say, putting together, that's the whole picture of the human civilization. Mm-hmm. There shouldn't be just one standardized type of governing style. There could be another kind of governing style, like what we are doing now, to stay close with the people and put people together, use this kind of collective thinking to overcome more and more difficulties. So that's my understanding about this civilization.
New forms. So radical, Chinese success, modernization, obviously offers something at least food for thought, available different choices maybe for other developing countries in their course of pursuing modernization?
Yes, I mean, I must say, while of course I agree that China represents a very distinctive path of modernization, I'd also like to stress something, which is that, I mean, while I totally understand the desire to not necessarily, kind of oppose the West as such, but Chinese modernization represents a radically new way of modernization. Until now, modernization is a term that has been connected with the Western capitalist way of thinking. What China represents, however, is something radically new, I would say, in at least 4 different ways. Because until socialism arrived on the stage of world history with the Bolshevik Revolution and then the Chinese Revolution, which followed just a few decades later, all development had taken place in the imperialist countries. And the new type of development represented by socialist countries today, with China in the forefront, is radically new because this development is taking place, number one, without the privilege of imperialism. They are not exploiting other countries to develop themselves. Number two, they are developing from a starting point to which they have been lowered by imperialism. Imperialism interfered in their histories and disrupted their histories and impoverished them in many respects, the century of humiliation and so on. So China had to emerge from that lower starting point. Number three, it had to do so while imperialism was resisting it. In China's case, for the first several decades of China's existence, the most powerful country in the world did not even recognize its existence. Its rightful place in the United Nations, in the Assembly of the World of Nations, was taken by a tiny island and was given to a tiny island. Nearly 1 billion people of the world, or they were less at that time, but still, about a sixth of humanity was deprived representation in that. So this kind of wars, China suffered the threat of nuclear war, being attacked by nuclear war for decades in its history. And finally, it had to do so without the luxury of exporting excess populations to allegedly empty continents. So in all of these ways, what China represents, the kind of development and modernization China represents, is radically new. And the fact that it has made such a thumping success of this is something to be proud of, and it is engineered by the party. It is not something that happened spontaneously. It was done by the party, and that's why the party is to be congratulated.
Carlos, what are your thoughts? China would say modernization is a peaceful process. China did not start a war, to take the fortune into their own hands simply by working hard, by designing the plan, or by working with domestically as well as externally. So now, we are, and they are in the frontier, even in terms of some of the advanced technologies already here.
Yeah, I agree with what Radhika stated, that we're talking about modernization which is historically very unique because it's being achieved without colonialism, without slavery, without war. And if you look at the history of modernization in the advanced capitalist countries, essentially in Western Europe, in North America and Japan, that's the modernization process that heavily relies on plunder, on pillage, on conquest. One can look at the history of the Industrial Revolution in Britain, where I am today, where Radhika is today. Going back to the development of the steam engine, it's actually well documented, including in a famous book by Eric Williams, who was a radical Trinidadian student in London and went on to become the president of Trinidad, called Capitalism and Slavery, that the development of the steam engine relied on capital and investments that came directly from the slave trade in the Caribbean. So we're talking about a process of modernization and industrialization that required the extraction of wealth from the colonies, from the labor of enslaved people. China's modernization instead relies on the creativity and the hard work of the Chinese people and the leadership of the Communist Party of China. And Xi Jinping has talked about this a number of times, that there are 4 important features to China's modernization. First, that it's the modernization of a huge country, a country with a huge population. Second, that it's the modernization of common prosperity for all. And this is very important because here in Western Europe, in North America, these are modernized countries, but the fruits of modernization are not shared. You can go outside my apartment in London and very quickly see really quite surprising and alarming number of homeless people, for example. So there's massive inequality, and there are millions and millions of people who don't meaningfully benefit from the wealth that modernization has provided. Thirdly, Chinese modernization has to be the modernization of harmony between humanity and nature. And of course, the process of industrialization in the West has taken us to the brink of potentially catastrophic climate breakdown. And if the rest of the world wants to modernize, it has to modernize on a new path of ecological civilization. And fourthly, it's a modernization of peaceful development. So it sort of inverts this Western pathology of modernization through conquest and through war. And very importantly, and this is a world historic factor, China's modernization is shattering an essentially Eurocentric or racist idea that modernization means westernization, that if you want to modernize, you have to follow the path that was followed in Western Europe and the United States or North America. And in doing so, that it expands the modernization path for the whole of the global south. It provides proof that a developing country can modernize on its own terms outside of the sort of US-led imperialist system.
Yeah, it also served as an inspiration to a lot of the developing countries there, probably we can say so. Radical presidency also said that, the socialist China led by the party is recognized as a builder of a world peace, a contributor to global development, and a defender of the international order. Of course, this is about the party, the nation, and the world relationship here. So, what is the message here to the international community?
Well, I think that it's very important to understand that there's a lot of talk going on right now about how we are entering a new age of great power conflict. And I'm always at pains to distinguish between what was happening on the eve of the First World War and what is happening now. They're two totally different things. What was happening on the eve of the First World War is, yes, indeed, great capitalist powers were entering into conflict with one another. Today, the reality is completely different. All the war, the aggression, the sanctions, the other sorts of aggression, war, sanctions, etc., are all emanating from a declining capitalist world. And meanwhile, in this context, China is essentially acting as a kind of ocean of stability, ocean of predictability, and spreader of peace, trying to promote agreement where there is war and conflict, and so on. So I think that so the message is that the Chinese people represent a new civilization whose difficult birth is today taking place, because essentially the old capitalist world is trying to fight its decline. It is declining. And I think that China has to, essentially keep the world stable, keep the world on an even keel, while this extremely violent and destabilizing process continues. And I think that China is doing a great job of it. And I think it has put the Chinese people, you were talking about people, nation, and the world. So I think that the Chinese people are in the forefront of this process, as few other people are. So I think that this is a great historic mission that they are carrying out.
Well, with that, we come to the end of today's show. Many thanks to our guests. Xu Qinduo, thanks for being with us. See you next time.
From north to south, east to west, people in China are chasing their dreams and leaving their mark. Want to know how they beat the odds and made a difference? Footprints brings you the true life stories of their journeys.
Ever wondered what's actually going on in Africa through the perspective of an African? How are things really going between China and Africa? What's the narrative of this relationship? Well, get a perspective with China-Africa Talk. Hear from African diplomats, entrepreneurs, academics, Chinese natives, and more. Get on our wavelength every week to find out what's real with China-Africa Talk. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more.
This is CGTN Radio.